poor girl searching for work, entered the wrong door, and fate led her to a millionaire. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain drizzled softly over New York City, blurring the morning skyline into streaks of gray and gold. The sidewalks glistened, alive with umbrellas and hurried footsteps. Inside the revolving glass doors of the WardTech Tower, a young woman hesitated, clutching a thin folder of resumes against her chest. Her name was Lila Hayes, 24 years old, tired and hopeful. Her jacket was too light for the weather, her shoes soaked through from the puddles. She had spent the entire morning knocking on office doors across downtown, hoping anyone would give her a chance. When she glanced at the directory board, her eyes caught a familiar name: WardTech, hiring floor 18. Her heart lifted. She took a shaky breath and pressed the elevator button. Maybe this was it, the miracle she had been praying for. The elevator chimed and opened to a long, quiet hallway lined with glass offices. Lila stepped out, her reflection flickering beside her in the polished marble. She could hear voices ahead: a meeting, maybe an interview. She followed the sound, pushed open a door, and froze. The room was not a reception area. It was a conference hall, sleek and intimidating, with a panoramic view of the city stretching behind the man seated at the head of the table. He looked up from his tablet, sharply dressed in a dark suit that fit him like confidence itself. Ethan Ward, 32, CEO of WardTech, the kind of man whose presence filled the silence before he even spoke. Lila swallowed hard. Sorry, I am here for the interview. Ethan's brow furrowed slightly. He had not scheduled any interviews today. In fact, the next person he expected to see was an investor from Boston. But something in her voice, small, trembling, sincere, made him pause. He glanced at the damp folder in her hands, the way her hair clung to her cheeks. Right, he said slowly, leaning back in his chair. Of course, you must be the candidate for the creative support role. Lila blinked, relief washing through her. Yes, that is me, she said quickly, not realizing this was not true. He gestured toward a seat. Have a seat, Miss Hayes. Lila Hayes. The sound of her name in his low voice made her chest tighten. She sat carefully, trying not to drip on the pristine floor. Ethan glanced at her folder, now slightly smudged with rain. Tell me, Lila, what made you apply to WardTech? She bit her lip. I guess I am just looking for a place that believes in starting small. I know I do not look like much, but I work hard, and I do not quit. There was no practiced pitch, no polished confidence, just truth, raw and trembling. Ethan found himself listening more intently than he had to anyone in months. And what are you passionate about? He asked. Lila hesitated, then opened the folder. Inside was not a resume. It was a small sketchbook filled with pencil drawings, street corners, coffee cups, faces of strangers. She flipped to a page showing a glass skyscraper, sunlight breaking through its windows. I drew this last week, she said softly. It reminded me that even the coldest buildings can reflect warmth if you look from the right angle. Ethan recognized it instantly, the same tower they were sitting in. His tower. For the first time that day, he smiled just a little. That is a very unusual answer, he said. Unusual good, or unusual bad? She asked nervously. Good, he said. Very good. Outside, thunder rumbled faintly over the city. Inside, something quieter began, an understanding neither of them could name yet. Lila thought she had just walked into another interview. Ethan knew she had just walked straight into his life. The next morning, the city woke up wrapped in the pale light of early spring. Traffic hummed below the high-rises, and a faint smell of coffee drifted from the street carts. Inside a tiny apartment in Brooklyn, Lila Hayes sat by the window, her sketchbook open but untouched. The edges of yesterday felt unreal. She kept replaying that strange interview, the way Ethan Ward had looked at her, steady, curious, but not unkind. She had walked into the wrong room and somehow ended up speaking to a millionaire CEO. There was no reason he would remember her. Still, the thought made her heart skip. Her phone buzzed. A new message. She almost dropped the cup of instant coffee in her hand. "Thank you for your time yesterday. We would like to invite you to assist at the WardTech Innovation Gala next week." Lila blinked in disbelief. "Assist," she murmured. Maybe they needed extra hands to serve refreshments. It did not matter. It was work, and she needed it. She pressed her forehead against the cold window, whispering a silent thank you to the universe. Across the city, Ethan Ward stood in his penthouse office, watching the skyline through the rain-speckled glass. His assistant, Claire Adams, entered with a clipboard. "You moved yesterday's investor meeting," she said. "Should I reschedule?" Ethan turned slightly. "No, let them wait." Claire raised an eyebrow. "That is not like you. What happened yesterday?" Ethan hesitated, almost smiling. "A mistake," he said, "but maybe the best one in a long time." He remembered the young woman's nervous hands, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about seeing warmth in cold buildings. There was something honest about her, something unpolished but real. For years, his world had been made of suits, contracts, and perfect manners. That 5-minute encounter had felt more genuine than 100 meetings combined. A week later, the Grand Hall of the Metropolitan Conference Center gleamed under a canopy of chandeliers. Waiters in black uniforms hurried between tables, arranging glasses and name tags. Lila adjusted the black vest the event coordinator had handed her. It was too large, but she smiled anyway. She did not know if Ethan would even be there. Her job was simple handout programs and help with the art exhibit display in the lobby. Still, her stomach twisted with nerves. At 7 sharp, the guests began to arrive. Photographers' flashes bounced off the marble floors. Lila stayed near the back, stacking folders, pretending not to notice the swirl of elegance around her. Then a hush spread through the room. The crowd turned toward the stage. "Please welcome the founder and CEO of WardTech, Mr. Ethan Ward," the announcer declared. Lila froze. The folder slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a soft thud. Her breath caught. There he was, confident, composed, the same man who had smiled at her across a glass table a week ago. He began to speak, his voice clear over the microphone. "When I started WardTech, I believed that innovation was not just about machines. It was about people, about seeing potential where others see failure." Every word struck something deep inside her. The audience applauded, but she could barely hear them. Her cheeks burned. All this time, she had thought he was a mid-level manager humoring her in an empty meeting room. The truth stood under the spotlight, wearing a tailored suit and a name that filled news headlines. When the speech ended, Ethan stepped down from the stage, shaking hands, exchanging polite smiles. Lila gathered the scattered folders, her hands trembling. She needed to get out before he saw her. "Lila," the voice came from behind her. She turned. Ethan was standing only a few feet away, his expression caught between surprise and relief. "I was hoping you would come," he said softly. Her pulse quickened. You knew I was here." "I requested it," he admitted. "I wanted to thank you properly for yesterday." She shook her head. "You did not have to. You are the CEO, Mr. Ward. I should not even have been in that room." He smiled faintly. "Maybe you should have. You reminded me what honesty looks like." Quote, the words were gentle, but they made her heart ache. She wanted to believe them, yet everything between them had started with a mistake. "I should go," she whispered, backing away. "Lila, wait." But she was already turning toward the exit, slipping into the crowd, her footsteps echoing against the marble floor. Ethan watched her disappear through the doors, the applause from the ballroom fading behind him. For the first time in years, a boardroom victory felt empty. Outside, the rain began to fall again, thin and silver, as if the city itself were sighing for the chance that had almost been lost. The rain did not stop that night. It came down steady and soft, painting streaks on the taxi windows as Lila Hayes rode home in silence. The city lights blurred into gold and blue through the glass. She pressed her forehead against the window, her reflection looking back at her small, tired, and completely out of place in a world of chandeliers and designer suits. At her apartment, she hung her wet jacket on a nail by the door and sank onto the small couch. The sketchbook sat open on the table, the page showing her pencil drawing of the Wardtech Tower. For the first time, the image made her chest hurt. She whispered to herself, "How could I be so foolish?" A knock on the door startled her. She opened it to find Jenny Cooper, her roommate and best friend, holding 2 cups of instant ramen. "Okay, spill it," Jenny said, tossing her coat aside. "How was the gala? Did you meet anyone important?" Lila hesitated, then gave a weak laugh. "You could say that. I met my mistake." Jenny frowned. "Your what?" Lila told her everything: the mix-up at the interview, Ethan's kindness, the sketchbook, and the revelation at the gala. By the end, Jenny's eyes were wide. "Wait, you mean that Ethan Ward, the billionaire app guy?" "Yes," Lila said, rubbing her temples. "And I sat in his conference room like an idiot, talking about seeing warmth in glass buildings." Jenny tried not to laugh but failed. "Okay, that is wild. But honestly, he sounds not awful." Lila sighed. "He lied to me." Ugh. Jenny tilted her head. "Did he though? Or did you both just play along?" The question hung in the air. Lila did not answer. She just stared at the rain dripping from the windowsill, wishing she could stop caring. The next few days passed quietly. Lila returned to her search for stable work, sending out applications and waiting for calls that never came. The money in her account was running low. The hospital had sent another reminder for her mother's treatment bill. On Thursday morning, her phone buzzed again. "From Claire Adams Wardtech. Mr. Ward would like to meet you for coffee. 3 p.m., Riverside Cafe." Lila's first instinct was to delete it. But something inside her, that small voice of curiosity that had led her into the wrong door in the first place, whispered, "Go." At exactly 3, she arrived. The cafe was quiet, the smell of roasted beans and rainwater lingering in the air. Ethan sat by the window, his coat draped neatly over the chair. When he saw her, he stood. "Lila," he said softly, "thank you for coming." "I almost did not," she admitted, taking the seat across from him. "I am still not sure why I did." He nodded, accepting her honesty. "You deserved an explanation." Quote, he told her the truth, how he had mistaken her for an applicant because his investor meeting was canceled, how he had meant to tell her the truth but could not find the right moment, and how he had kept thinking about her words about warmth and light long after she left. "I was not laughing at you, Lila," he said. "I was moved by you. You reminded me of why I started Wardtech in the first place." She looked down at her hands, unsure what to say. "You run an empire, Ethan?" "You do not need to remember someone like me." "That is exactly why I should," he replied. "Because people like you see what people like me forget." His tone was steady, not rehearsed, not charming, just true. He reached into his coat pocket and placed a small envelope on the table. "I know you are an artist," he said. "I have a program called Art in Tech. It funds small exhibits that connect creativity and innovation. I would like you to be part of it." Quote. Lila stared at the envelope but did not touch it. "Why me?" "Because you already gave me the best pitch without knowing it," he said. "That sketch you showed me, it changed how I looked at this city." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence between them. Finally, she asked, "What if I say no?" "Then I will thank you for coming," he said gently, "and I will hope that someday you will believe I meant every word." Her chest tightened. She reached for her cup, her hands trembling slightly. "I will think about it," she whispered. He nodded. "That is all I ask." When she left the cafe, the rain had stopped. The street shimmered in the light of the setting Sunday. Lila stood on the corner, holding the envelope. Her reflection in the cafe window looked different now, not just the tired waitress who had walked into the wrong door, but a woman standing at the edge of something she could not name yet. Inside, Ethan watched her go, his expression unreadable. For the first time in years, he was not thinking about stock prices or quarterly reports. He was thinking about the girl who had walked into his meeting by mistake and somehow managed to make everything in his world feel right again. A week later, the sun broke through the gray sky for the first time in days. Lila Hayes walked through the busy streets of Manhattan, the letter from Ethan Ward folded carefully inside her bag. She had read it so many times that the edges were worn. It was an official invitation from Ward Tech to join the Art in Tech initiative as a creative consultant. She still did not understand why a billionaire would care about someone like her, but the offer was real. And so was the pay enough to cover her mother's hospital bills and rent for months. When she reached the towering glass doors of the Ward Tech headquarters, her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. She checked her reflection in the lobby mirror. Her outfit was simple but neat, her sketchbook clutched close like a shield. The receptionist greeted her kindly and directed her to the 27th floor. The elevator doors opened to a space filled with soft light and modern art on the walls, paintings, sculptures, and digital screens showing moving patterns. It did not feel like a tech company. It felt like possibility. Ethan was waiting near the window, dressed in a navy shirt instead of his usual suit. He smiled when he saw her. "You came." "I almost did not," she admitted, stepping closer. "I kept thinking this had to be some kind of mistake." "Some mistakes," he said gently, "are exactly what we need." They walked through the open floor where designers and engineers worked side by side. Ethan explained how he wanted to bring human emotion into technology, how design could connect people instead of isolating them. Lila listened, surprised by how passionate he sounded. He was not the cold executive she had imagined. He stopped beside a white wall lined with sketches and concept boards. "This," he said, "is where your perspective matters. I want you to help us see differently." She blinked. "You mean me? I do not have a degree or experience in this." He smiled. "You have honesty. You see stories where others see numbers. That is what this company needs." Lila looked around at the team members watching her curiously. She felt out of place but also strangely seen. For the first time in years, someone believed in her without asking for proof. Days turned into weeks. Lila's desk became covered in sketches and ideas. She found herself laughing again, brainstorming with designers twice her age. Every evening, she took the subway home with a tired smile and the smell of coffee and pencil shavings on her hands. Ethan often stopped by her workspace, pretending to ask for updates but mostly listening. Their conversations grew longer about art, about loss, about what it meant to start over. One evening, when most employees had gone home, Lila stood near the window, the city glowing beneath her. Ethan joined her quietly. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Becoming this powerful." He thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he said, "success can be a lonely place. People stop being honest with you until someone walks into the wrong room and reminds you what truth sounds like." She laughed softly. "You really need to stop calling it wrong." "Then let us call it fate," he said. The air grew still between them. Lila turned toward him, and for the first time she noticed the weariness in his eyes beneath the confidence. She realized he was not untouchable after all. He was just human, tired, searching, maybe even afraid of being seen. Before she could respond, the elevator doors opened and Claire Adams stepped out, holding a tablet. "Ethan, the investors from London are waiting on the video call." Her gaze flicked to Lila, a polite but assessing look. "Miss Hayes, you are staying late again." "I was just finishing up," Lila said quickly, stepping back. Ethan nodded. "Thank you, Claire. I will join in a moment." When Claire disappeared into the conference room, Lila reached for her bag. "I should go." He looked at her for a long second. "Thank you for giving this place a little more light." She smiled faintly. "Thank you for seeing me." That night, as she left the Ward Tech Tower, the city breeze caught her hair, and the glass building shimmered behind her like the drawing she had once made. For the first time, she felt she belonged somewhere not by accident, but by choice. Inside his office, Ethan watched from the window as she disappeared into the flow of evening lights. For a man who thought he had everything, he suddenly realized how much he had been missing until the day she walked through the wrong door. Spring melted into summer, and the city took on that golden haze that made everything feel possible. Inside Ward Tech, the days were long but full of life. Lila Hayes had become more than just a consultant. She had become part of the pulse of the company. Her sketches now hung in the hallways, her handwriting marked on presentation boards. Every morning she arrived with a cup of coffee and a new idea. And every evening, Ethan Ward found a reason to stop by her desk sometimes to discuss a project, sometimes just to ask how her day had been. Their connection had grown quietly, carefully. It was not rushed. It was in the way he listened to her and the way she reminded him of something real. But in the upper floors of Ward Tech, whispers began to circulate. The staff had noticed the way the CEO looked at the new consultant. Claire Adams noticed too. She had worked beside Ethan for 5 years and had never seen him laugh the way he did now. One afternoon, as Lila prepared for a major presentation for the Art and Tech Showcase, Claire approached her with a tight smile. "You have done impressive work, Miss Hayes, but you should know, in this world, success draws eyes. And not all of them are kind." Lila nodded politely, though her stomach tightened. She knew Claire meant well, or maybe she did not. Either way, it was true. She had already read online comments calling her the CEO's charity case. That evening, Ethan found her in the design room, staring at her sketchbook. "You are quiet today," he said. "People are talking," she replied softly. "They think I am here because of you, not because of what I do." Gum. He folded his arms, his expression firm but gentle. "Let them talk. You earned your place here." She shook her head. "You do not understand, Ethan. I am not like the people in your world. I cannot afford to be a rumor." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He wanted to say something more, but the silence between them said enough. The next morning, the company buzzed with excitement. The Art in Tech event was being held that evening, a public showcase of their collaboration between creativity and innovation. It was also the first event that Lila had helped design from the ground up. The ballroom at the Metropolitan Center glittered under the soft glow of silver lights. Reporters, investors, and artists filled the room. Lila stood backstage, smoothing the front of her dress, nerves fluttering in her stomach. Ethan approached her, adjusting his cufflinks. "Ready?" he asked. "I think so," she said, forcing a smile. He hesitated, then reached out, his voice low. "No matter what happens out there, remember you belong here." Before she could answer, Claire appeared again. "Ethan, the press wants a photo before you go on stage." He nodded, stepping away, leaving Lila standing alone behind the curtain. She could hear the applause as he took the stage, speaking confidently about the vision behind Ward Tech's new era. When her turn came, she stepped into the light. Her hands trembled as she spoke about art and technology, about how beauty could exist even in machines. The crowd listened, captivated. For a moment, she forgot the fear. But then a reporter called out, "Miss Hayes, is it true you were personally hired by Mr. Ward after a private meeting? Some say your position was not earned." The question sliced through the room. Lila froze. Cameras flashed. Ethan rose from his seat, his jaw tight. She forced a smile and said, "If being honest about what you believe in counts as a qualification, then yes, I earned it." The audience murmured, impressed by her composure. Ethan's expression softened, pride flickering in his eyes. Later that night, after the event ended and the crowd dispersed, Lila stood alone outside the building, looking up at the glowing city skyline. Her phone buzzed a text from Ethan. "You handled that perfectly. You do not need to prove anything to anyone. But I am proud of you." A small smile touched her lips. For once, she felt peace. She did not know what would happen next. But standing under the city lights, she realized something had changed. She no longer felt like the girl who had walked into the wrong room. She was where she was meant to be. And somewhere high above, behind the glass windows of Ward Tech Tower, Ethan Ward watched her leave with the quiet certainty that fate had just begun to rewrite both of their stories. The next few days passed like a blur. The Art in Tech Showcase became the talk of the city. Articles praised Ward Tech's bold vision, but most of all, they praised Lila Hayes, the unknown artist who had turned technology into emotion. Her sketches appeared on magazine covers, her name trending online. But not every headline was kind. Some questioned her credibility, others hinted at favoritism. Lila ignored them at first, but the noise grew louder. Every time her phone buzzed, she braced for another comment that twisted her story into something ugly. At Ward Tech, Ethan Ward noticed the change in her. She moved quietly now, keeping to herself, leaving the office as soon as the clock struck 5. One evening, he found her in the conference room, erasing sketches from the whiteboard. "Lila," he said softly, "why are you doing that? These are brilliant." "They are yours," she replied without looking at him. "All of this belongs to Ward Tech. I should not leave my mark where it does not belong." He stepped closer. "You belong here more than anyone. Do not let rumors rewrite what you have built." She sighed, her voice trembling. "You can say that because you have nothing to lose. I have everything to lose, Ethan. My reputation, my dignity, my mother's care. I cannot survive another mistake." The word mistake hit him like a wound reopening. He took a slow breath. "Then, let me help. I can issue a statement, make it clear, you earned everything by merit." She shook her head. "If you defend me, it will only prove them right." For a long moment, they stood in silence. The city lights reflected across the glass walls, wrapping them in pale gold. Ethan wanted to say more, to tell her how deeply he cared, but the timing felt wrong. Instead, he simply said, "You are stronger than you think." A week later, Ward Tech prepared for a major board meeting. The agenda included the company's next big investment, but whispers among board members were focused elsewhere. Some wanted Ethan to step back from daily operations, claiming his personal involvement with an employee had caused distraction. That morning, Claire Adams knocked on his office door, her face tense. "Ethan, the board is asking questions. They want to review the employment records for Lila Hayes." He looked up sharply. "Why?" "They think her hiring violated protocol," she said quietly. "If you do not address it, they might demand a formal investigation." Ethan exhaled, frustration tightening in his chest. "She did nothing wrong. I approved her contract and I stand by it." Claire hesitated. "Then you should prepare for what comes next." That evening, as the board gathered in the glass-walled conference room, Ethan walked in and set a file on the table. "Before we begin," he said calmly, "let me clarify something about Miss Hayes." Every eye turned to him. She was hired on merit. Her project revived our brand and increased engagement by 30%. If anyone here doubts her worth, I will resign before allowing her name to be dragged through the mud. The room fell silent. After a tense pause, the chairman cleared his throat. "That will not be necessary, Mr. Ward. The results speak for themselves." When the meeting ended, Ethan walked out to find Lila waiting near the elevator, holding her sketchbook. "I heard," she said softly. "You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did," he replied. "Because this time, the mistake would have been staying silent." Her eyes filled with quiet emotion. "You really are impossible," she whispered, smiling despite herself. He smiled back, a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with success or pride. That night, as they stood by the glass window overlooking the city, neither spoke. The skyline shimmered around them, and for the first time, both knew that what had started as a misunderstanding had become something far deeper, something real. Summer turned into autumn, and Ward Tech entered its busiest quarter. The company's success was undeniable, but for Ethan Ward, the spotlight felt heavier than ever. The rumors about his connection to Lila Hayes had faded from the headlines, yet inside the company, resentment simmered quietly. Some of the older executives felt threatened by the changes Ethan had made, especially the new creative department led by Lila. One afternoon, as Lila prepared a presentation for an upcoming charity partnership, Claire Adams entered her office, holding a printed email. Her tone was clipped. "Miss Hayes, the board has decided to audit your department's spending. They claim certain invoices are missing signatures." Lila frowned. "That cannot be right. I submit everything through accounting." Claire's eyes softened slightly. "I know, but someone is pushing this. Be careful. There are people who would rather see this department fail." That evening, Lila stayed late, reviewing every document. She found no mistake, but the accusation unsettled her. When Ethan stopped by, he found her surrounded by files. "You are still here," he said quietly. "They are saying I mishandled funds," she replied, her voice shaking. "It is not true, Ethan." He walked closer, his expression firm. I know it is not. Someone is trying to use you to get to me. She looked up at him. Then, stop protecting me. It only makes it worse. I am not protecting you, he said. I am standing with you. The way he said it steady, certain, made her chest ache. She had spent her whole life fighting to be enough, and here was a man who refused to let her fight alone. 2 days later, WardTech hosted the Global Innovation Forum, a high-profile event broadcast across networks. It was supposed to celebrate their achievements, but for some, it was an opportunity to strike. Halfway through Ethan's keynote speech, a journalist interrupted with a question that froze the room. Mr. Ward, sources claim a recent internal audit found irregularities in the art and tech budget under Ms. Hayes' supervision. Is that true? Gasps rippled through the audience. Cameras turned to Lila, who sat near the stage. Her face went pale. Ethan's hand tightened on the podium. He took a deep breath and spoke clearly. Yes, there was an audit, and it proved that every dollar was accounted for. What you heard was a rumor designed to discredit the most hardworking person in this company. He turned slightly, meeting Lila's eyes. WardTech would not be where it is today without her vision, and if defending her costs me my reputation, then so be it. The room erupted in applause. The cameras flashed wildly, capturing his words, the CEO defending an employee not out of obligation but conviction. After the event, Ethan found Lila standing in the empty hallway, her eyes glistening. You should not have done that in public, she said softly. Maybe, he admitted. But the truth needed to be heard. Where the lies were shouted. Her lips trembled, caught between gratitude and disbelief. You could lose everything for me. He stepped closer. Lila, I already lost the peace I had before I met you. What matters now is what is right. For a moment, neither spoke. The tension between them felt like electricity, alive and undeniable. She finally whispered, You make it very hard to walk away. Then do not, he said simply. Outside the glass walls, the city lights shimmered like 1,000 beating hearts. Inside, time seemed to stop. For the first time, both of them stopped pretending that what they felt was just respect or coincidence. It was something deeper, born from truth and tested by fire. As the evening quieted, Lila realized that every wrong turn, every misunderstanding, had led her exactly where she was meant to be, standing beside the man who had seen her worth when the world refused to. A few weeks later, autumn leaves began to gather along the sidewalks outside WardTech Tower. The storm of rumors had finally quieted, replaced by praise for the company's integrity and leadership. Investors renewed their confidence, and the Art and Tech Initiative received record funding. But for Lila Hayes, none of that mattered as much as what had changed between her and Ethan Ward. They had stopped pretending. There was no grand confession, no dramatic declaration. It was in the small things, the way his hand brushed hers when they passed papers, the way he waited for her by the elevator every evening, the quiet understanding in their glances. One evening, as the city lights blinked awake beyond the tall glass windows, Lila stepped into the studio that had once been the prototype space for their art project. Now it was empty, except for the faint scent of paint and coffee. Ethan was there, leaning against the railing, a rare softness in his eyes. You should not be working this late, he said. I could say the same to you, she replied, smiling. He nodded toward the far corner, where a new canvas stood draped with a cloth. I have something to show you. She tilted her head. What is it? Take a look, he said. When she lifted the cloth, her breath caught. It was not a painting. It was her own sketches, framed and displayed across the wall, each one carefully restored from her notebook. At the center hung the first drawing she had ever shown him, the WardTech Tower shimmering in pencil light. She turned to him, her eyes wide. You kept them. I kept everything that reminded me why I started again, he said softly. Lila, this studio will open next week as a permanent exhibit, The Art of Seeing. It will be credited to you. Tears stung her eyes. You did not have to do this. I did, he said, because you changed what this company stands for. You changed what I stand for. For a long moment she could not speak. The city lights reflected off the glass, painting them in gold and silver. Finally she whispered, "Ethan, I do not know what to say." "Then do not say anything," he murmured. "Just stay." He reached out, his hand finding hers. The silence between them felt full of gratitude, of redemption, of something that had grown quietly and honestly. That night, as they stood together beneath the glow of her sketches, Lila realized something profound. She had come to the city searching for work, for survival, but she had found something far greater, a place where her art mattered. A man who saw her truth, and a love that began with a mistake and ended with purpose. Winter arrived quietly in New York. The first snow of the season dusted the rooftops and softened the noise of the city. Inside the newly opened Art of Seeing gallery, warm light spilled across the walls. Guests moved slowly between the framed sketches, their voices hushed with admiration. The collection had become an instant success, praised for its authenticity and emotion. At the center of the room stood Lila Hayes, dressed in a simple cream dress, her hair falling softly over her shoulders. She greeted visitors politely, still overwhelmed by the fact that her name now appeared on the gallery's sign. Every piece on display told a fragment of her journey, every mistake, every hope, every miracle that had brought her here. Behind her, Ethan Ward watched quietly, a small smile tugging at his lips. He had seen her grow from the nervous young woman who stumbled into his boardroom to the confident artist standing before the world. When the last guests began to leave, he approached her, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You still take it with 1 sugar, right?" She smiled. "Some things do not change." God note. They stood together, watching the city lights blink through the wide gallery windows. "You did it, Lila," he said softly. "This place is everything you dreamed of." She turned toward him. "We did it," she corrected. "You believed in me when no one else did." He set down his cup and reached into his coat pocket. In his hand was a small velvet box. Lila froze, her heart pounding. Ethan took a quiet breath. "From the day you walked into the wrong room, my life stopped feeling like routine and started feeling like possibility," he said. "You showed me what real vision looks like, not through numbers or screens, but through kindness and courage. So, I have one question." He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring. "Will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes. She covered her mouth, unable to speak. After a long moment, she nodded. "Yes, Ethan. 1,000 times, yes." Quote. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and the crowd that remained clapped softly. For a moment, the world outside disappeared. Snow fell gently against the glass, catching the glow of the gallery lights. The sign above the entrance read, "The Art of Seeing, dedicated to the one mistake that changed everything." As they stood hand in hand, surrounded by the warmth of their shared creation, Lila whispered, "It was never really a mistake, was it?" Ethan smiled, his voice barely above a whisper. "No, it was fate." And under the falling snow, their story born from an accident, tested by truth, and redeemed by love, finally found its perfect ending.